Hey, Alec Miller here, founder of Rails and Rogues, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to make a wind tunnel in Embergen. Now, what I always try to do when I teach things is I want to teach concepts and rules and things that are going to be useful to you for more than just one specific scenario. So bear with me as I explain some of the thoughts behind what I'm doing. So if you just want to make a wind tunnel, sure, skip ahead, I don't care. But the idea is to teach you the tools in a way that allows you to apply them to more than one specific program or instance. But rest assured, because Embergen's a new program and a lot of people don't understand exactly how it works, I'm going to be going through all the details. So this is going to be kind of a comprehensive look at Embergen as well as how to do something unique in it. And that's why we're doing a wind tunnel. I could teach you how to do explosion. I'm sure I will teach you how to do explosion in the future in Embergen, but I want you to think outside the box. What else could I use this program for? How can I achieve a certain look or solve a certain problem with the tools I have at hand? And if you happen to have Embergen, well, how can I make a wind tunnel with it, right? It's usually made for explosions and fire, but could you do a wind tunnel? We're about to find out. Stick around. Obviously, the first step is to open Embergen. And when you open Embergen, you're going to find a scene like this. You're going to have a little flaming torus, and you're going to have your node window on the right. Below that, you're going to have the options window, and then on the bottom left, you're going to have a timeline. We're not going to worry about the timeline too much right this second. What we're going to do is start on the left and work our way to the right. So first things first is you're going to notice that we have this torus shape as a primitive, and that's going into the emitter shapes. And this is what the shape of your emitter is going to be. So if you wanted this to be a circle, you can make it a circle. If you wanted it to be an object, like a torch or something, you can make it that, or a burning car, or whatever you want. But we're going to make it into a rectangle because that's going to be the most useful for us. We're going to make a box, and we can either change the properties of it up here in this little top left options menu or down in the node options menu. So I'm going to grab this one up here. We're going to grab the shape, and we're going to make it really wide. If you notice, it cuts off. And the reason why it cuts off is because the bounding box is too small. And if I hit View up at the top left here, I can go to Bounding Box, or you can press B to get to the bounding box. And that's going to show you the limits of your simulation. So what we want to do is come over to Emitter, ignore that for now, and go over to Sim. And if you notice, our voxel count is going to decide the size of our box. And it's really tall right now. Z is up currently, and not very wide. So instead we're going to make it a lot wider with upping X, and a bit more deep. We're going to make it a lot shorter. And the more you up this, the longer your sim is going to take to simulate. But that's fine. I'm going to grab the move tool over here, and we're going to move our shape back over here. And you have to select it, over here. Okay, so now we can make it a little bit taller too, and a little bit wider. And now we have a little burning wall. So this burning wall isn't that useful. It's just a wall of fire. What we can do is come over to our forces, and right now you notice it's kind of, there's some noise in it. It's moving around. My cat's trying to get back on the desk again. Anyway, no. So if you notice, we have this flaming wall, and it's a little random, right? It's kind of, the fire showing up everywhere. So we're going to turn off our noise. That's going to lower the randomness of it. And as you can see now, it's kind of a little more uniform, but we have a bunch more problems. One is we're emitting a bunch of fuel, which is catching fire due to the temperature, and we don't want any of that. So we're going to turn off our fuel in the emitter tab, and we're going to increase our smoke rate. The other thing we're going to do is drop our temperature down to 0. We don't really need any temperature. The next thing we're going to do, now this is going to be where most of your time is spent as far as dialing in exactly what you want for your sim, because this is the whole sim, right? It's a simulation node. So we're going to grab that simulation node. We're going to go over all the way to wind. And this is going to be what drives most of our stuff. So we're going to zero this all out for now. And I'm going to increase the wind speed. But as you can see, we're not sending in any direction because they're all zeroed out. And if we look down here, we can see which direction we want to send it in, which is going to be X, because that's going to be long ways. So I'm going to up my X wind direction a little higher. And now, already, you'll start to notice, oh, this is starting to look a little bit like a wind tunnel. So what else do we need to do? Well, the next step is going to be to go to voricity. And voricity is simply the amount of curls that your smoke has. So you can think of it like if you light a match and it has that little wispy very smooth flame, or smoke, I should say, that's low voricity smoke. And if you have something like a burning building or a bomb, that's really high voricity. That's going to have a lot of curls, and it's going to be moving in very circular motions as it goes out. So just think of it that way. So we're going to drop this down to 0. And you'll notice it smooths way out, which is pretty sweet. So now we kind of have this liquid-like smoke going on. So what's next? Well, next is, in order to have this wind tunnel, Aloy, you're being so annoying right now. You're killing me.
Milo!
We have this kind of smooth, liquidy smoke just kind of shooting down this pipe here. We need it to interact with something, right? This doesn't look like really great. So we're going to come over to our simulation tab, and you'll notice we have this colliders input. And what you can do in Embergen, which is really cool, is grab the input and drag it out, and it will give you a list of the outputs that are possible to connect to it, which is really, really nice, because in a lot of programs, like when you're trying to build a texture in Redshift, let's say, you do this and it doesn't do anything. You don't really know what can go into that. And so you're kind of experimenting a lot, trying to, well, can I put noise in there? Can I put this in there? Can I put that in there? And now you know. So the only thing we can put in here is a collider. So we click collider. So now we have a collider going into our collider thing. And now nothing's changed. Well, that's because it needs a shape. So we're going to grab the shape. We're going to drag out. Now you have a couple options for shapes. And I'm going to start with a primitive. And right away you can see it did something. Well, what do you know? We have a little ball, and now it's hitting our smoke and causing it to move. And it's kind of like, if you noticed, a wind tunnel. Look at that. We're simulating the physics of this thing hitting this. Now, that's cool and all, but what would be even cooler is if we had something that actually would be in a wind tunnel, like a car or maybe a plane. And what I can do here is we're going to click on the shape thing again, the shape input, drag it out, and we're going to choose import. And what that's going to do is give us the option to import an FBX file, which is currently what's supported. So it just gives you a little folder option, and you can click here, and it says asset path. And you click on that, and that's going to let you choose whatever you want. And we're going to choose this airliner FBX that I have and bring it in. Now you'll notice nothing's really happening, and that's because it's way, way too small. So we're going to go over the global transformation tab within our input, which is what we use to import models, right? FBXs. And we're going to grab the master scale, and we're going to up it by 100, let's say. There we go. Now we have this big old plane. Now the cool part about Embergen is it also supports animation. So if you make a little animated loop like I did here, you can import that animation and run the sim against the animation, which is awesome. So I'm going to drop the scaling down a little bit because that's a bit too big. And we're going to get right about there. So now what we're going to do is we need to rotate this. So again, I can either use these options or I can use the global transformation options, and I can change the rotation on Z to -90, I believe. Yep. And that's going to put us where we want. So now if I drag this down, you can see we're starting to get somewhere. This is starting to look like a wind tunnel. Now we have one big problem, and that is that while there's this cool wind tunnel effect going on, it's still not looking quite right. We can't see the plane through all the smoke that we're doing. So what's the problem? What do we need to do? Is it our wind? Is it our shredding? No, none of this stuff. Our main problem is going to be the fact of how we're rendering this. We're rendering out all the smoke, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to see all the smoke. We mostly just want to see where it interacts with our airplane, right? We want to see this cool effect here. How we do that is you go over to the volume tab. So we're working our way farther to the right, and now we're in volume. And what you want to do with this is the volume node, I should say. Once you're in the volume node, you can go to post-processing, and we can go with some cool stuff. We can sharpen the smoke up or smooth it out. I'm going to smooth it out for now. But that's not really what we want to do. What we want to do is go to the post-modulation tab. So you go to volume, post-modulation, and we're going to hit active, and nothing changes. Well, that was a big waste of time. What we just did is we've enabled the ability to have one source run another target. Now, this can be a bit complicated, and I would highly recommend you just explore within these options to see what works best for you and get some really, really fun results. I'll just demonstrate it here. So right now we have smoke is the source, and the target is also smoke. So all the information coming into the smoke is going out to smoke. But what if we took all the information coming in and changed it to voricity? Well, that does that, and that takes in all the voricity and outputs it to smoke. And so now what we're doing essentially is only rendering smoke where voricity is happening. And like I said, voricity is those curls. It's wherever the smoke stops being this smooth line and starts being this more turbulent mass. So if you look here, now you can start to see our airplane interacting with the smoke inside, which is really cool. The only problem is it's still really hard to see, right? It's still really foggy. So we're going to turn off our bounding box to get a better idea of what's going on, as well as turn off our ground and our sky. So now we get a more objective view of what's happening. And there's just a little on-off switch on the node. You don't have to disconnect it or anything. It's really nice. So then what we're going to do is come down here to the way it's interpreting this. So this is our source range and our target range. And this is a lot like if you were to be clamping the whites and the darks, right? In the levels, right? So if you've ever used a levels tool in Photoshop or After Effects, this is a lot like that. You're saying anything above this, lose it, and anything below this, get rid of it, right? Or only include things in this range. So it's allowing you to choke, as it were, what you're seeing, what you're not seeing, the fall off. So what we want to do is change the source range way down, and what do you know? Suddenly we have this glorious wind tunnel. The other thing I can do here is we can hit view, and I can turn off shapes. And then we won't be seeing our shapes. We're just seeing the smoke sim now. And here we go. This, you could pretty much stop here. You're at a pretty good point. You can bring this into whatever program you want and be happy. But we're going to tweak it a little bit more. We're going to change the source range to be whatever we want. And we can change the interpolation here, where it cuts off, how far. And we can change the way this is. So we can do this as a sine, cosine, linear, or cubic, and have this cut off sort of in different ways. So we just want to find one that looks really nice. Now, if you're getting issues where you don't want to see all this extra stuff that's happening, right? You've tried dialing in your input range and your output range, but you're still getting some of these wavies in the corners and stuff. You can change the size of your primitive, right? So trying to make this a little smaller so it's not hitting the corners as much. But if you're still getting those issues, the chances are your simulation wind speed is too high. So we're going to simulation wind, and then we're going to drop the speed down to something more reasonable until those go away. And you can actually get some cool effects this way too. So there we go. Now we've dropped our simulation wind speed down, and you're seeing a pretty cool little trails coming off our airplane. So that's sweet. And we can drop this down or up or however we want. So this is pretty cool. This is a pretty cool effect we have going on. But what else do we want to do? There you go. Let's see. The other tool you're going to want to use is your target range. So you can target this to certain things. So this is going to be how much of it shows up, and this is going to be the max amount. So if you drop that down a little bit, you can cue it in, and then we can kind of get rid of these side elements by just playing with these two settings as well as your input here. So if you're still getting little edge pieces, if you're still getting little flyers on the side here, you're still getting these little like corners and stuff. The last thing to check, and what I'd highly recommend you do, is come over to the operator, and this is controlling how it's implementing your simulation. So how it's translating the voricity to the smoke. And what you're going to want to do is, normally the default's replace, which does a decent job, but what you want to do is probably go to min or multiply. So min is going to really restrict it down to just the minimum amount, more or less. And what you're going to want to do is probably mess around with your emitter in that case to make sure that you're covering all the things you want to cover. So you're going to want to push it up here and make sure it hits this tail fin better. It's going to take a second because the wind's moving slow, but you'll watch this grow up here. There it goes. So you're going to want to do that. And the other thing you're going to want to do is try out multiply, which I find gives a really nice effect. I really like multiply probably the best. And so that's going to give you this effect here that we have now, where you don't see all those little wispies in the corners and the bounding box affecting your output. So if you don't want the bounding box affecting the output, you can just do that. And the coolest part is all this will show up in your finished VDB. So when you export to VDB, all these different settings and changes are going to be implemented when you do that. So this is what your simulation will look like. And if it's too low resolution for you, if you want to up the resolution, simply go to simulation and simulation size. You can play with these if you want to be really specific. The voxel size, you can change that too. But I recommend you can just hit upscaling 2 times, right? And now it's twice as large. It's going to take a little longer to render in real time here. But that's fine. It'll still it'll still play back just as fast in your export. Want to look at just for fun is also pressure, which is also going to be useful if you're getting weird things going on. You're not sure why. Looking at the pressure is going to help a lot, because what the pressure is going to do is expand your sim, right? It's going to be causing it to, like a balloon, it has some pressure on it. So if you make the additional pressure higher or lower, you can start to see, we get some interesting results here. So I usually would turn it down to 0 for most of these, but if you want to do some fun stuff, you can kind of see here I'm doing some fun changing the pressure and changing the veracity. And you can change the randomness of the pressure and so on and so forth. But generally, you want to keep that low. And you can control the smoke rate too, is another thing. If you're getting too much smoke, you think, just turn the smoke rate down until you're getting the right amount. All right, so now that we got this looking pretty good, what else can we do? Well, just for fun, we can come over to our shading here, and we can go over to smoke. We can ignore flames because we're not making any flames. But if you go to smoke, you have render smoke, and then you can change various aspects of it. So one of the things you want to do is smoke coloring. And what we can do here is go down to exposed gradient or color ramp. We're going to do the gradient, and what that's going to do is, well, nothing. But it is going to open up this smoke color option. So from there, we can drag this out, boop, and the smoke color input, and choose gradient. You can choose any of these things you really want. You can even have it been done by a MIDI channel using sound and music and stuff. But we're going to do a color gradient. And right away, you can see now all of our smoke is white. Well, we don't want it white. We want it to be cool colors. We want it to be a blue in here. So we're going to add a new color by just clicking anywhere on the gradient, double clicking that, and then you can set whatever color you want. So we're going to do blue, sort of this fun blue color. But as you notice, it's not really showing up, and I can try to dial it in here to make that happen, but I don't really like that. It's kind of looking garish. So instead, we're going to do is go to the shading tab again, and then you can remap the color ramp, and that's what you're going to really want to do. So that allows you to kind of shift the ramp one way or the other. And you can set a smoke density limit here, clamp on all this stuff, but and then scale the density too, which is really nice. If it's just not looking thick enough to you, if it's looking a little wispy, you can up the density. That's how you make a wind tunnel in Embergen. Now, there's a few other things you can do, obviously, to tweak this if you really want. That's more or less the end of the tutorial. That's the whole thing. Simply create a VDB export node, right, from your volume, and then export to whatever folder you want, whatever frame rate you want, the number of frames you want, and you're ready to go. You can bring that into whatever program you want that supports OpenVDB and run it. So if you really want, let me know in the comments below, and I'll show you how to bring that into Redshift and make that look good and render out. But if you want to render this out, you can even do that. If you just need a quick shot, you can render this out on Alpha, match your camera in After Effects, and there you go. You're ready to get a wind tunnel shot imported, and it's super fast and about the same cost as buying, like 2 different stock pieces of stock footage, right? A stock piece of stock footage is like $80. So for the cost of, 2 pieces of stock footage, you could easily create as many wind tunnels as you want. So that's pretty cool. I really like that this is a thing in Embergen, and that you can use this in other ways than just explosions and fire. Now that I've shown you, though, how to do this, we can do a couple little tweaks. One of the things we can do is you can go back to your simulation, go to Veracity, and increase it again. And then you'll start getting some fun effects, right? You can increase your large Veracity, lower Veracity. And so this is this kind of bonus, is play around, right? This is what I really recommend you do. Follow a tutorial, sure, but then tweak it. Then really make it your own. Mess around with it. I've had the job of hiring a lot of VFX artists and motion graphics artists over the last 10 years. And over again, what I'll find is their portfolio will just be a collection of tutorials. And that's understandable. If you haven't had a lot of real world experience or you haven't done a lot of jobs, then your stuff is going to probably look like tutorials. What sets people apart, though, when I go to hire them is the people that went a step beyond following the tutorial. They didn't just look up a Video Copilot tutorial and follow it to the letter. They would have messed with some of the settings. They decided to, change the colors up and change the way it worked, or swap it out into a new type of use case that I hadn't seen used before. And that's what's really going to set you apart, is if you can show you can problem solve. You can show you can take a tutorial and move past just the basics and do something really interesting with it. And so that's what I look for when I'm hiring people, and when I'm when I see someone's work that's a lot of tutorial work, is, well, did they change it at all? Did they mess around and, even change some basic settings that weren't exactly following the footsteps of whoever made the tutorial? So that's how you make a wind tunnel in Embergen. If this was useful, if you were excited, please hit like. If you want me to show you the next step, which is bringing this into Redshift and getting a VDB render in Cinema 4D, let me know. I'll do that. I try to keep these as render agnostic as possible, like I did with my particles video, but I understand that sometimes people need a little bit more hand-holding in order to get to the end result that they want. If you want that, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.